In the intricate tapestry of human personality, certain threads stand out for their unique weave, their distinct coloration. Among these is the INTJ, the architect of thought, the visionary strategist, a mind often perceived as operating several steps ahead of the conventional. Rooted in Carl Jung's framework of psychological types, the INTJ is characterized by a dominant introverted intuition, guiding their perception, and a powerful extroverted thinking, shaping their engagement with the world. They are the natural system builders, the quiet innovators, often driven by a profound need for competence and a vision for how things could be. But what happens when this already independent mind embarks on a path of even more radical individuation? What occurs when the INTJ, often a master of navigating or even subtly manipulating existing systems, chooses to step outside them almost entirely? This is where we encounter a fascinating and often misunderstood evolution, the emergence of the INTJ Sigma. This is not merely a new label or a fleeting trend. The INTJ Sigma represents a specific developmental trajectory, a profound shift in how the core INTJ cognitive architecture interacts with the world. It is a journey away from conventional metrics of success and social validation, towards a state of radical self-sovereignty and strategic detachment. Today, we delve deep into the Jungian psychological underpinnings of this transformation. We will explore the mechanisms that drive an INTJ towards this Sigma path, the key differences that distinguish the INTJ Sigma from their more conventional INTJ counterparts, and the unique way they integrate their shadow to achieve a formidable, often enigmatic, presence in the world. If you recognize in yourself the INTJ's drive for intellectual mastery and strategic independence, or if you've ever felt the pull to operate outside established norms, not out of rebellion, but out of a deeper calling for authenticity and autonomy, then this exploration is for you. We will dissect the triggers, the phases of transformation, and the unique psychological landscape of the INTJ who chooses the path of the lone strategist, the ghost in the machine. Stay with me as we unravel the complex journey of the INTJ Sigma. To understand the INTJ Sigma, we must first lay the groundwork by examining the standard INTJ personality through a Jungian lens. At the heart of the INTJ, according to Jung's typology, lies a dominant function of introverted intuition, I. This is not a mystical power, but rather a profound ability to perceive underlying patterns, synthesize complex information, and envision future possibilities. I operates unconsciously, often delivering insights that feel like sudden realizations or deep understandings that are difficult to articulate linearly. It's the source of the INTJ's visionary capacity, their ability to see the long-term implications of current trends or decisions. This dominant I is supported by an auxiliary function of extroverted thinking, T. T is the INTJ's primary way of interacting with the external world. It is logical, decisive, and focused on organizing systems and implementing plans to achieve clear objectives. T seeks efficiency and effectiveness, driving the INTJ to structure their environment, their projects, and even their arguments with precision. It's this Ni-T pairing that creates the quintessential mastermind, or architect, the visionary who can also build the blueprint and oversee its construction. Further down the functional stack, we find introverted feeling, Phi, as the tertiary function. Phi is concerned with internal values, authenticity, and deeply held personal convictions. While not as readily apparent as Ni or T, Phi provides the INTJ with a strong moral compass and a desire for their actions to align with their core principles. However, because it is less developed, INTJs can sometimes struggle with navigating complex emotional landscapes or expressing their own feelings, often preferring to rely on logic and strategy. Finally, the inferior function is extroverted sensing, C. C is focused on engaging with the present moment and the tangible sensory world. For the INTJ, this is often their least developed and most unconscious function. This can manifest as a certain detachment from their physical surroundings, a potential for overlooking practical details if they don't serve the larger vision, or even discomfort with purely sensory or spontaneous experiences. Stress can sometimes bring out an unhealthy expression of C, leading to impulsive actions or an overindulgence in sensory input. The INTJ's cognitive makeup naturally inclines them towards independence. Their I provides a rich inner world of ideas and insights, often making external validation less critical. Their T gives them the tools to solve problems and achieve goals autonomously. They are often drawn to complex systems, be they intellectual, technological, or organizational, and possess a keen ability to identify inefficiencies and devise improvements. This systems thinking approach, combined with their strategic foresight, often places them in roles where they can innovate and lead, though they may prefer to do so from behind the scenes rather than in the direct spotlight. However, this very nature creates an inherent tension. The INTJ's vision, driven by I, can often be far ahead of its time or radically different from prevailing norms. Their T desire for logical consistency and efficiency can lead to frustration with irrational social structures, bureaucratic absurdities, or emotionally driven decision-making in groups. While they can be adept at navigating these systems when necessary, there's often an underlying sense of detachment, a feeling of being an observer rather than a fully integrated participant. This internal landscape, the visionary mind, the strategic operator, the quiet idealist, and the somewhat disconnected sensor sets the stage for the potential emergence of the INTJ Sigma. It is from this foundation of profound independence and systemic understanding that the journey towards an even more radical form of autonomy can begin. Now that we have a clearer understanding of the foundational INTJ personality, we can explore the concept of the Sigma archetype. It's important to note that Sigma male or Sigma female are relatively modern social labels, not terms coined by Carl Jung himself. However, the underlying psychological dynamics they describe, particularly the drive for autonomy, detachment from traditional social hierarchies, and self-reliance, resonate deeply with several core Jungian concepts, most notably the process of individuation. In popular discourse, the Sigma is often contrasted with the Alpha and Beta archetypes, which describe individuals who either lead and dominate social hierarchies, alphas, or comfortably follow and support them, betas. The Sigma, however, operates outside this conventional structure. They are not driven by a need to lead, nor are they content to simply follow. Instead, they carve their own path, often preferring solitude or highly selective engagement, valuing their independence and freedom above social status or external validation. They possess many of the same strengths as an alpha: confidence, competence, strategic thinking, but choose not to engage in the overt power dynamics of the social game. From a Jungian perspective, the Sigma archetype can be seen as a powerful expression of the individuation journey. Individuation, for Jung, is the lifelong psychological process of becoming an individual, that is, a separate, indivisible unity or whole. It involves differentiating oneself from the collective consciousness, integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality, including the shadow, and ultimately realizing one's unique potential. The Sigma's deliberate withdrawal from societal expectations and their focus on internal mastery and self-defined purpose can be interpreted as a radical pursuit of this individuated state. Furthermore, the Sigma archetype often embodies elements of what Jung called the hermit, or the wise old man/woman archetype. These are figures who withdraw from the everyday world, not out of misanthropy or failure, but to cultivate inner wisdom, gain deeper insights, and often to return with a unique perspective or offering that can benefit the collective, albeit from a distance. The hermit is not lost. They are intentionally removed, seeking truth and mastery in solitude. The INTJ Sigma, with their strategic mind, their preference for deep, focused work, and their often unconventional insights, can certainly reflect this archetypal pattern. They may not seek to lead the tribe, but they might offer the crucial map or the innovative tool developed in their self-imposed isolation. Why does this Sigma archetype resonate so strongly with certain INTJs? The INTJ's natural independence, their systems thinking approach, which allows them to see the mechanics, and often the flaws of social hierarchies, and their potential disdain for inefficiency or emotional manipulation within those systems make them prime candidates for such a path. When an INTJ concludes that the cost of social engagement, the compromises to authenticity, the energy drain of superficial interactions, the limitations imposed by collective norms outweighs the benefits, the Sigma path can appear not as a rejection of society, but as the most logical and strategic route to preserving their energy, integrity, and pursuing their long-term vision. It's a calculated withdrawal, a strategic repositioning to a vantage point outside the conventional game, where they can operate with maximum autonomy and minimal interference. The transition from a more conventional INTJ to an INTJ Sigma is rarely an abrupt event. It is typically a gradual process, often spurred by a series of realizations, experiences, or a profound internal shift. Several key catalysts can propel an INTJ down this path of radical individuation. Understanding these triggers helps illuminate why this particular personality type might consciously choose a life of strategic detachment. First, disillusionment with systems is a powerful motivator. INTJs, with their innate ability to see and understand complex structures, are often acutely aware of the inefficiencies, irrationalities, and manipulations inherent in many social, corporate, and political systems. They may initially try to work within these systems, to improve them, or to achieve their goals through them. However, repeated encounters with bureaucratic inertia, office politics, illogical decision-making, or ethical compromises can lead to a profound disillusionment. The INTJ may conclude that the system itself is fundamentally flawed, or that the energy required to navigate or reform it is simply not worth the return. This isn't necessarily a cynical rejection, but a pragmatic assessment. The thought process might be, why fight this machine or try to fix its deeply ingrained flaws when I can analyze its weaknesses, disconnect from its dependencies, and build my own, more efficient and ethical operational reality? Second, a realization that autonomy equals true power often emerges. INTJs value competence and control over their own endeavors. When they find their vision undermined, their strategies micromanaged, or their insights consistently misunderstood or dismissed within conventional structures, they begin to see dependence on others or on the system itself as a critical vulnerability. They recognize that true power for them lies not in climbing a hierarchical ladder or amassing external accolades, but in achieving complete autonomy intellectual, emotional, financial, and operational. This realization drives them to systematically remove themselves from dependencies that could compromise their freedom or their ability to execute their vision according to their own exacting standards. Third, social exhaustion combined with a strategic cost-benefit analysis plays a significant role. INTJs are introverts, and their dominant introverted intuition means their primary energy source is internal. While they can engage socially, particularly if it serves a strategic purpose, they often find superficial interactions, small talk, emotionally charged environments, or large group dynamics to be profoundly draining. The INTJ Sigma, through logical assessment, may begin to view many social obligations and relationships as having a high energetic cost for a relatively low return in terms of intellectual stimulation, authentic connection, or strategic advancement. They start pruning their social life, not out of malice or social anxiety, but because they conclude that they simply don't need extensive social networks to feel whole, to achieve their goals, or to find meaning. Their few chosen connections become deeper and more purposeful. Fourth, an existential awakening or personal crisis can be a profound catalyst. Sometimes, a significant life event, a betrayal, a major loss, a career upheaval, or a deep personal disappointment can shatter the INTJ's existing framework for understanding the world and their place in it. This crisis can force a reevaluation of their values, their priorities, and the very meaning of success. They might realize that the conventional paths they were pursuing, or the societal expectations they were trying to meet, are ultimately unfulfilling or inauthentic. This existential reckoning can lead them to seek a more solitary path, one focused on internal truth and self-mastery, often in silence and deep reflection, away from the noise and influence of the external world. Finally, there's the point where mastery becomes more important than recognition. The conventional INTJ, while independent, may still be motivated by the desire for their competence to be acknowledged or for their vision to achieve external success. However, the INTJ on the path to becoming Sigma often outgrows the need for external validation. The intrinsic satisfaction of deep work, the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, the perfection of their craft, or the quiet accumulation of wisdom or resources becomes paramount. They prioritize depth over praise, purpose over popularity, and the quiet execution of their vision over the public acclaim that might accompany it. This shift marks a profound internal locus of control and self-worth. These catalysts often intertwine, creating a compelling case for the INTJ to consciously uncouple from mainstream societal tracks and forge their own. It's a journey driven by logic, a deep need for authenticity, and an unwavering commitment to their own internal compass. The journey from conventional INTJ to INTJ Sigma typically unfolds through distinct phases. This is not a random or impulsive shift, but rather a methodical process of transformation that aligns perfectly with the INTJ's strategic nature. Let's examine these phases to understand how this evolution manifests. The first phase is awareness. This is when the INTJ begins to perceive the artificiality and inefficiency of many social structures and expectations. They start to recognize that what most people call the game, the complex web of social positioning, impression management, and hierarchical climbing, operates according to rules that often prioritize appearance over substance, conformity over innovation, and politics over merit. The INTJ notices how leaders aren't necessarily the wisest or most ethical, but often the most skilled at manipulation or the most willing to compromise. They realize that they can intellectually deconstruct most social strategies and see through the performances that others take at face value. This awareness doesn't immediately lead to withdrawal, but it plants the seed of questioning. If this game is largely artificial, am I obligated to play it by the established rules, or at all? Have you experienced this growing awareness? That moment when you see through the social choreography that others seem to accept without question. This recognition is often uncomfortable, creating a sense of being a perpetual observer rather than a natural participant in many social contexts. The second phase is withdrawal. Having recognized the nature of the game, the INTJ begins a strategic retreat from aspects of it they find most draining or inauthentic. They reduce contact with superficial social groups, decline invitations to events that offer little intellectual or strategic value, and become more selective about where and how they invest their energy. A key marker of this phase is that they stop explaining themselves. The INTJ in withdrawal no longer feels compelled to justify their choices, preferences, or perspectives to those who are unlikely to understand them. They redirect their focus toward long-term, often solitary projects, writing, coding, investing, research, or other endeavors that allow for deep work with minimal social friction. This isn't typically an angry or reactive withdrawal, but a calm, deliberate reallocation of resources toward what they value most. The third phase is reinvention. Having created space through withdrawal, the INTJ begins to construct a new system of life on their own terms. They redesign their environment, their daily routines, their work arrangements, and their relationships to maximize autonomy and minimize unnecessary friction or dependency. They may seek financial independence through investments, entrepreneurship, or specialized skills that allow them to work on their own terms. They might create physical distance through relocation or digital nomadism. They often develop a minimalist approach to possessions and commitments, eliminating anything that creates unwanted entanglements or maintenance burdens. The goal is not to create a new hierarchy where they sit at the top, but rather to establish a life with minimal noise and maximal control, a clean, efficient system optimized for their unique priorities and way of operating. The final phase is what might be called silent domination. This doesn't refer to controlling others, but to achieving a position of quiet strength and self-mastery. The fully realized INTJ Sigma has built a life that operates largely on their own terms. They may have achieved significant financial independence, mastered their craft, or developed rare and valuable expertise. They often exert influence through their work, their ideas, or their strategic decisions, but do so without seeking the spotlight or requiring external validation. They may be admired, feared, or misunderstood by those who encounter them, precisely because they are rarely fully seen. Their power comes not from their position within a hierarchy, but from their freedom from it. They can engage or disengage at will, contribute or withhold, based solely on their own assessment of value and alignment with their principles. From a Jungian perspective, this transformation process can be understood as a profound journey of individuation. The INTJ Sigma is separating from collective norms and expectations, the persona, integrating aspects of their shadow, including their capacity for solitude and self-sufficiency, and moving toward a more authentic expression of their unique self. It's worth noting that this is not a linear process with a clear endpoint. The INTJ Sigma may cycle through these phases in different areas of life, or revisit earlier phases as circumstances change. The essence of the journey is not reaching a fixed destination, but achieving the freedom to navigate according to one's own internal compass. Now that we understand the catalysts and process of transformation, let's examine the key differences between the conventional INTJ and the INTJ Sigma. These distinctions are not about one being superior to the other. Both represent valid expressions of the same cognitive architecture. Rather, they reflect different adaptations and priorities that emerge from the same fundamental personality structure. In terms of social approach and engagement, the conventional INTJ is selective but strategic in their social interactions. They may build networks that serve their goals, participate in professional communities that offer intellectual stimulation, or maintain social connections that provide value. They might not enjoy small talk or large gatherings, but they recognize the utility of certain social engagements and navigate them competently when necessary. The INTJ Sigma, by contrast, has moved beyond strategic social participation to a place of deliberate detachment. They have typically pruned their social circle to a bare minimum of deep, authentic connections. They avoid most group activities, networking events, or social obligations, not out of anxiety or inability, but out of a conscious choice to preserve their energy and autonomy. When they do engage, it's highly selective and entirely on their own terms. Regarding their relationship to authority and hierarchy, the conventional INTJ often works within existing structures, even as they may seek to improve or reform them. They might pursue leadership positions if it allows them to implement their vision, or they might operate as valued advisors or specialists within organizations. They can be critical of ineffective leadership or flawed systems, but they generally work within the framework to effect change. The INTJ Sigma, however, has largely opted out of traditional hierarchies. They may create their own small-scale systems or operate as independent agents. They don't seek to climb ladders or gain conventional authority, as they view most hierarchical structures as inherently limiting. Their approach is not to reform the system from within, but to build alternative paths outside of it. Their communication style also differs notably. The conventional INTJ tends to be direct and logical, sometimes blunt, but generally willing to explain their reasoning or defend their positions when challenged. They value clarity and precision in communication and expect the same from others. While not overly emotional in their expression, they recognize the need to sometimes modulate their communication for different audiences. The INTJ Sigma has often moved beyond explanation or justification. They communicate when necessary, but feel no obligation to make themselves understood by those who don't share their wavelength. They may appear enigmatic or cryptic to others, sharing their full thoughts only with a select few, if anyone. Their communication becomes increasingly efficient, stripped of social niceties or unnecessary elaboration. In their approach to status and recognition, the conventional INTJ may not be driven primarily by external validation, but they often still value recognition of their competence and contributions. They might pursue credentials, positions, or achievements that reflect their capabilities and open doors to greater impact. While not typically status-obsessed, they understand the practical benefits of certain markers of success. The INTJ Sigma, however, has largely detached from conventional metrics of status. They prioritize freedom over power, autonomy over recognition. They may achieve significant success by objective standards, financial wealth, expertise, or creative output, but they measure this success against their own internal benchmarks rather than social expectations. They often deliberately avoid the spotlight, preferring to exert influence without drawing attention. Their energy source and motivation reveal perhaps the most fundamental difference. The conventional INTJ is motivated by strategic success, the implementation of their vision, and the achievement of long-term goals. They derive satisfaction from seeing their ideas materialize and their systems function effectively. While internally driven, they still operate with some awareness of external metrics and milestones. The INTJ Sigma finds motivation almost entirely within. They are driven by freedom from constraining systems, by internal mastery, and by alignment with their own principles and vision. Their satisfaction comes not from what they achieve in the eyes of others, but from the integrity of their process and the autonomy with which they operate. They have shifted from being a mastermind focused on external impact to being a loner strategist or ghost in the system, whose primary battlefield is internal. Finally, their approach to shadow integration differs significantly. The conventional INTJ may struggle with aspects of their shadow, their emotional vulnerabilities, their need for connection despite their independence, their occasional desire for recognition despite their self-sufficiency. They might project these shadow elements onto others or experience them as uncomfortable eruptions during times of stress. The INTJ Sigma has often done more extensive shadow work, integrating these disowned aspects of themselves. They have made peace with their contradictions and no longer feel compelled to prove themselves to others or to deny their complexities. This integration gives them a certain calm detachment that can be mistaken for coldness, but is actually a form of psychological wholeness. These differences don't emerge overnight, nor are they absolute. Many INTJs exist somewhere along the spectrum between these positions, or may express Sigma traits in some areas of life, but not others. The key insight is that the INTJ Sigma represents not a different personality type, but a specific evolutionary path that some INTJs choose consciously or unconsciously in response to their experiences and realizations.